Just a few hours ago, President Donald Trump made an announcement from the White House that sent shockwaves around the world. The United States will impose a historic 25% tariff on all imported vehicles starting April 2nd. This unprecedented move in recent international trade history represents a significant escalation in the protectionist agenda driven by the Trump administration. With a firm and decisive tone, Trump explained that the primary objective of this measure is to revitalize the American automotive industry, which has suffered for decades due to factory relocations and massive job losses to countries with lower production costs such as Mexico, Canada, and several Asian nations. The president made it clear that these tariffs are neither negotiable nor temporary, emphasizing that they aim to generate up to $100 billion annually in fiscal revenue, funds he promises to reinvest directly into developing industrial infrastructure within the United States. The immediate impact of this decision will be particularly severe for automakers in Japan, Germany, and South Korea, which heavily rely on the U.S. market to sell millions of vehicles each year. Concerns also extend to the complex supply chains throughout North America. For years, the US, Mexico, and Canada have developed an integrated production system where vehicles and parts cross borders multiple times before reaching the final consumer. This delicate balance now faces potentially devastating disruption. Trump insists that this policy will drive massive repatriation of industrial operations to U.S. territory, creating thousands of new jobs and strengthening the domestic economy. According to the president, global automotive companies now have a strong economic incentive to invest in new plants and expand existing ones within the United States, thereby securing a solid foundation for industrial growth and stable long-term employment. However, numerous experts and economic analysts have expressed serious doubts about the practical effectiveness of this strategy. Establishing new industrial plants requires years of planning, infrastructure investment, specialized workforce training, and compliance with rigorous environmental and labor regulations. These processes cannot be significantly accelerated simply by imposing tariffs. Furthermore, they warn that, in the short term, this measure could lead to substantial price increases for American consumers, exacerbating the economic situation for millions of families already impacted by inflation. The uncertainty also affects American automakers, many of which depend on imported components to assemble their vehicles. A sudden rise in costs could reduce their competitiveness in the global market, further complicating the economic situation of the domestic automotive sector. Meanwhile, international reactions have been swift. The governments of Japan, Germany, South Korea, Canada, and Mexico have expressed deep concern and begun considering retaliatory measures, which could trigger a global-scale trade war. This potential escalation could spread to other sectors, such as agriculture and technology, creating unpredictable consequences for the global economy. With this announcement, Trump not only establishes a new trade policy, but also sends a powerful message to the rest of the world. The United States is prepared to radically redefine the rules of international trade. Now, the entire world holds its breath, awaiting how the next chapters in this dramatic economic confrontation will unfold. Domestically, Trump's announcement has garnered broad support from industrial and labor groups who view this policy as an opportunity to recover lost jobs and revitalize abandoned industrial areas. However, this support sharply contrasts with concerns from economists and consumer groups who fear widespread price increases and reduced purchasing power for American families. The polarization around this measure could also have significant political consequences in the context of the upcoming presidential elections. Trump seems to be betting on a high-risk strategy, confident that his protectionist policies will solidify his electoral base despite potential negative economic repercussions in the short term. Just hours after the announcement, Trump directly warned Canada and the European Union about potential coordinated economic retaliation. He promised even higher tariffs if these nations unite against the United States. The financial markets responded immediately. Shares of General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, and Tesla dropped significantly, reflecting the uncertainty and fears of a profound economic impact. Analysts anticipate that the prices of imported cars could increase drastically. For example, an electric vehicle produced outside the United States could rise by as much as $12,000. This, combined with inflationary impacts and the risk of international retaliation, could lead to a significant economic slowdown. Europe, Canada, and China have started preparing retaliatory actions, creating an environment similar to a full-scale trade war. The European Union is evaluating new regulations that could severely affect major U.S. tech companies like Google, Meta, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Meanwhile, Canada is studying countermeasures on strategic U.S. products, and China plans an aggressive response aimed at vulnerable sectors of the U.S. economy. As trade tensions escalate, international industries dependent on global supply chains are facing significant uncertainty. The automotive industry is just the beginning. If Trump's tariff policies extend to other key sectors like technology, agriculture, and energy, the damage to international cooperation could be deep. Tech companies like Apple and Microsoft, which have relied on components manufactured outside the U.S., could see their costs increase considerably, affecting not only the tech giants but also consumers worldwide who depend on cheaper products. Moreover, this trade war threatens long-term geopolitical alliances. Countries that have traditionally been close trade allies of the United States, such as Canada and the European Union, are beginning to reassess their relationship with Washington. The fear that Trump's policies could become an obstacle to free trade and global economic growth may lead to a reshaping of alliances, especially in an increasingly multipolar world. This not only affects the economies of the countries involved, but could alter global power dynamics, opening new opportunities for actors like China and Russia, who are ready to take advantage of any weakening of U.S. hegemony. The consequences of this trade escalation could go far beyond vehicles and tech products. With retaliation from the European Union and China becoming more concrete, the risk of a global trade war is imminent. Tariffs could become an even stronger tool of pressure, and if not managed carefully, this could trigger a worldwide economic crisis. Meanwhile, Trump remains firm in his goal to revitalize the U.S. industry, but the question remains, can he truly achieve this without causing irreversible damage to international relations and the global economy? The trade war could end up affecting ordinary citizens more than the big businesses, especially if product prices increase and job opportunities in key sectors are reduced due to disruptions in global supply chains. Trump's decision to impose such aggressive tariffs has far-reaching repercussions that go beyond the automotive industry. While this sector is one of the most affected, other key areas of both the U.S. and global economy are witnessing their own commercial dynamics shake. The automotive industry in particular faces enormous uncertainty. Production costs are rising significantly due to tariffs on imported components, and vehicle prices, especially for luxury brands like BMW and Mercedes-Benz, could increase by as much as $10,000 per unit. This price hike jeopardizes the competitiveness of these brands in the U.S. market, which is one of the most profitable for high-end car manufacturers. In addition to the automotive industry, other sectors are being severely threatened by international retaliation. U.S. agriculture, for example, could face additional tariffs from key countries like China and Canada, which have traditionally been major buyers of agricultural products such as soybeans, corn, and beef. Farmers are preparing for a decrease in exports and therefore their income, which will destabilize thousands of farms across the country. The consequences of this trade war could lead many producers to bankruptcy, reducing the competitiveness of the United States in global markets and affecting the local economies that depend on these exports. Tourism is another sector seeing significant impacts. Canadian tourists, who have historically been one of the largest groups of international visitors to the United States, have started reducing their trips in protest against Trump's trade and immigration policies. This translates to a drop in tourism revenue, affecting states most reliant on foreign visitors, such as Florida, California, and New York. The decline in tourism could result in millions of dollars in losses. and the disappearance of thousands of jobs linked directly to the sector. The impact on the alcoholic beverage industry is no less significant. Tariffs imposed on European wines and liquors have caused a slowdown in trade of these products. Retaliatory measures from the European Union have affected U.S. exports of whiskey and other goods, reducing demand for these products in key markets. Alcohol manufacturers face an uncertain future, with sales dropping and profit margins squeezed by tariffs. This could severely affect many small-scale distilleries and wine producers who depend on international markets to grow and survive. The outlook for the United States and the rest of the world is one of growing uncertainty. The tariffs are just the beginning of what could become a full-scale trade war, with countries responding to Trump's measures with even higher tariffs. The risk of a global economic crisis, similar to the one that occurred in the 1930s, is becoming more real. The cycle of retaliation could worsen, affecting more sectors and countries, potentially leading to a worldwide economic slowdown. The international community and financial markets are closely monitoring every move, fearful that what started as a trade dispute could escalate into one of the largest economic conflicts in recent history. The economic and trade decisions made by Trump not only have repercussions on the global economy, but also deeply affect the political and social landscape both within and outside the United States. The president's protectionist and aggressive rhetoric has created unprecedented internal polarization. While certain industrial and labor groups openly support Trump's policies, viewing them as an opportunity to reclaim local jobs and strengthen U.S. industry, other sectors of society feel increasingly excluded and concerned about the impact of these decisions. Various surveys indicate that public approval of these policies is deeply mixed. While workers in sectors like the automotive industry, who could benefit from the revival of U.S. factories, celebrate the measures, consumers and small businesses are increasingly worried about rising prices. The tariffs imposed on imported goods are driving up the cost of essential goods, exacerbating inflation. For many American families, this price hike could reduce their purchasing power, directly threatening the economic well-being of the average citizen. On the international stage, Trump's policies have triggered a strategic realignment in global trade relations. Traditionally, U.S. allies have begun to question their relationship with Washington. Closest trade partners, such as the European Union and Canada, are seeking alternatives to traditional agreements with the U.S., exploring new trade deals outside the reach of U.S. influence. This strategic shift has also led countries like China and Russia to strengthen their economic and geopolitical power, driving initiatives that could change the global economic power balance. Within the United States, political division has deepened even further. Trump's critics argue that his policies are risking the country's economic stability and damaging international relations. Political uncertainty is affecting market confidence and citizens' trust in the U.S. government's ability to maintain long-term international relations. Protests in various cities are increasing, and while Trump defends his position, the criticism is growing, particularly among those who believe the president's unilateral decisions are harming the global image of the United States. In this climate of political and economic tension, the immediate future promises to be even more complicated. The decisions Trump makes in the coming weeks and months will have far-reaching consequences, impacting not only the United States economy, but also its political and social cohesion. The country is at a crossroads where not only the ability to recover economically is at stake, but also internal stability and international relations. Finally, the key question remains open and perhaps more relevant than ever. Will Trump manage to revitalize the United States economy with this aggressive strategy, or will he instead be precipitating the world into a deep economic crisis? The coming weeks, with their commercial and political tensions, will be crucial in determining the future path not only of the United States, but of the global economy as a whole. Uncertainty is at its peak, and with it, expectations for an unpredictable future.